2nd, and that's it. The event now is recorded. Dear Alasdair, welcome even online in Greece. Thank you so much for joining and supporting our Whiskey Forum. Enough talking on my side. Please.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you for asking me to come on and talk about Isle of Raasay Distillery. So I'm Alasdair. I'm the co-founder and master distiller of Isle of Raasay Distillery. We're a very new distillery. We started distilling in 2017. We released our very first single malt in November 2020, just obviously through the end of COVID. And next year, November 2027, we hopefully will have some of our first 10-year-old whiskey being released. So it's a very quick introduction. My personal connection with whiskies through my great-grandfather. My great-grandfather was a whiskey blender in Coldstream in the Scottish Borders on the River Tweed. That company started in 1820, which is the same year as a company called John Walker and Sons that you may have heard of. That company was called G&A Davison. My great-grandfather took over the business in 1923, but unfortunately for me, he retired after the Second World War, and that was the end of the business. So in 2009, I inherited what the family call the cellar book. It has all of the blends that the company produced from 1899 to 1916. So I decided to try and recreate my great-grandfather's blended whiskey, which is called the Tweed Ale. And in May 2010, I launched my version of the Tweed Ale blend, and that's how I got started in whiskey. And that, after a few years of doing that, I realised very difficult. 2012 in particular was very difficult. So I was buying mature casks of whiskey. There's 9 different whiskies in the blend, a grain, 8 malts, Lowland, Highland, Speyside, and 1 Islay. So every time I produced the blend, I needed more grain, I needed more core malt. And so I realised very quickly, and it was very difficult to get good quality blends. Back then, that's 2012 when people were taking their age statements off. So that's when Macallan became Macallan Gold and so on and so forth. So I realised at that point I was going to have to raise some investment to if I was going to be able to scale the business. And when I was doing that and writing that business plan and looked at the numbers, I realised that I could build a small distillery for the amount of money that I needed to raise. And that's really where that light bulb moment, this idea of building a distillery in the Borders based on my family heritage through my great-grandfather. And so I wrote a business plan to build a distillery. And to cut a very long story short, pitching to investors, I met Bill Dobie. So Bill Dobie is the investor in Isle of Raasay Distillery. We met in November 2013. The company, which is called R&B Distillers, was incorporated in July 2014. We started trading in 2015. We broke ground. We got planning permission approved for Raasay in February 2016. We broke ground in June 2016. As I said, we started distilling in September 2017. So I was fortunate enough to be given a blank sheet of paper to design a distillery, design the process, and design the oak policy to mature the whiskey. So I had to decide what style of whiskey we were going to make. And obviously Raasay's in the Outer Hebrides. So for those who don't know, Isle of Raasay is a very small island off the east coast of Skye. And then Hebrides, it's 14 miles long, it's 3 miles wide. It's the same size and shape as Manhattan, but with a population of 161 people. Just to put it into perspective, there are about 2,000 sheep, but in 2011, when the last census was 161 people. So I'm pleased to say that now the population of Lassie is closer to 200, and we employ over 30 people at the distillery on Raasay. So as I say, we had to design, what the liquid was going to be, and obviously being a Hebridean island, we wanted it to be peated, but we've gone for a lightly peated style. So rather than heavily peated or like an Islay whiskey, we went for lightly peated. And that's because at the time when I was designing the distillery, the distilleries and the Hebrides were Tobermory, Jura, Talisker. So that's really where that kind of style came from. And so that was the lightly peated, but also to think of another flavour element, I wanted to go with a dark fruit flavour. That was really inspired by Bowmore and Islay. So at that time, a lot of people were talking about how Bowmore had this really dark fruit characteristic, but due to changes in the process, that had disappeared. So in the kind of 60s and 70s, Bowmore had this black fruit. People were talking about how it changed, and now they've worked very hard, and that character has come back. So that was the kind of inspiration. So in very basic terms, lightly peated with dark fruits. But I knew that we were going to release whiskey at 3 years old. So how could we produce an excellent whiskey at 3 years old? So again, the question was, well, what is an excellent whiskey? And to me, to have an excellent whiskey, you need complexity, depth, and balance. So that was all kind of designed into the process. In the process itself, we have various things that can be offer on. That allows us to produce different styles of new make spirit. We do 6 months of unpeated malted barley and 6 months of peated malted barley. So straight away, we've got 2 different new make spirit characteristics. They're matured separately in 3 different cask types. So we use ex-rye casks, Chinkapin oak casks, and ex-Bordeaux red wine. So you've got those 3 casks filled with unpeated spirit, the 3 cask types filled with peated spirits, all matured separately in our warehouses on Raasay. And only after maturation do we bring that back together and vatting. So it's very much an idea inspired by blending. As I say, I started in whiskey as a blender, and I guess I designed distillery as a blender as well. So it's bringing all of these components back, and that's the balance. That's the hardest part, is bringing that back together to create the balance in the whiskey. The cask types that we chose, so ex-rye. So we've chosen ex-rye over bourbon. The reason for that is that rye whiskey brings this black pepper spice element to it. So that is another layer, another complexity. Yes.
Sorry, Alasdair. Yeah, because you said that you have, let's say, 3 maturation lines, Chinkapin, Bordeaux, and or peated or not peated. Then you bring them all together. You bring them together and blend from bottling, or you do an extra maturation, meaning marrying the cask and allow for 1 to 2 years maturing together.
Yeah, so we refer to the 6 cask recipe. So the 6 casks, so that's the 3 cask types, unpeated, 3 cask types, peated, all matured separately. And then after maturation, just prior to bottling, that's when we do the vatting at that point.
So it's pure blending.
Yeah. I tend not to use the word blending with single malt, because for some people it's
vatting.
So it's vatting. But yeah, basically we're bringing all of those 6 components together.
Thank you, Alasdair. Thank you. John, question?
Okay, I've got a question. Why Raasay if there was 161 people and 2,000 sheep and it's in the middle of nowhere? With all due respect. I mean, it's definitely not for economic and logistical reasons.
You're absolutely right about that. Yeah, there would be much cheaper places to build a distillery, and also, talking about the cask recipe, there's a much more efficient way of making whiskey. But so, as I said, when I wrote the business plan for me with my heritage, it was about a Borders distillery. And when I met Bill and I pitched to him, he said, actually, I'm thinking about Raasay. And that's because Bill's oldest friend from school, Ian Hector Ross, Ian's wife, Marion's family's from Raasay. So slightly convoluted. And Ian had said to Bill, so Bill's a serial entrepreneur, made his money from various tech companies that he started up and then sold on, and then he started another and sold on. And he was just in the middle of exiting one of these companies at the time, and they were all on a skiing holiday, and they're all kind of pulling Bill's leg and saying, well, what are you going to do next? And there's always sort of discussion, you know, it was going to be Harris Tweed or bobble hats. And then, of course, Ian said whiskey. And when he said whiskey, he said, by the way, there's a disused hotel on Raasay. You should come up and see it. So Bill went up in February 2014. So I've been talking to him about building a distillery anyway. Bill bought the disused hotel, and his rationale was, if he can't make it into distillery, it'll be a very nice house. And I went up with Bill in 2014 and stood outside this disused hotel, looking at the views of Skye, the cooling, the red cooling and the black cooling, and that whole kind of adventure of getting there. And I just thought, you know, he's right. This is absolutely the right place to build the distillery. It's, and I think you know, we were talking earlier about some of you might come up and see us, and you know, we've got 10 ensuite bedrooms now. We've got 6 ensuite bedrooms in the house, and 5 of which are available to come and stay in. And then we've just in November finished 5 luxury cabins called the Bothies that you can come and stay with us. So it's very much very much about the experience of coming to Raasay. And as I say, it's just, as John quite rightly said, just getting there is an adventure. Having said that, we knew what we were doing. We knew that there was a ferry and everything had to come over in the ferry, and that's part of the reason that we do everything on Raasay. So we've got our own well on site. That water's used for everything. So that goes down 60 meters below the distillery. We use that for mashing. We use it for fermentation. We use it for cooling in the condensers. Most importantly, we use it for cask reduction before filling the cask. So although we've distilled most of that water out during the distilling process, we're adding it back in, the very same water back in at cask reduction. And then after maturation, we use the very same water for reduction to bottling strength as well. So we do absolutely everything on Raasay. Nothing leaves until it's in a bottle. And as I say, everything's matured on the island. We've got the accommodation, as I said. We've got a restaurant, a visitor centre, a bar. It's the whole island experience, and I think that's what make, you know, certainly helps make Raasay what it is. And I don't know if you noticed, but on the bottle we've got 161. It's the island population. That's when the census started. We've got a representation of the 6 cask recipe that I just started talking about, and we've got a representation of the geology of Raasay. Now, the reason that geology is there is because the geology of Raasay obviously affects the minerality of the water. So where we are, where the distillery is Jurassic sandstone. So it's a very old fractured rock. Jurassic, as the name implies, is from the time of the dinosaurs. And that's porous, so that's a big sponge. But everything around us is impermeable rocks. We've got volcanic rock like basalt, we've got granite. And, you know, over hundreds and thousands of years, when it rains on Raasay, and I have to say it rains quite a lot on Raasay, the water runs off these rocks and ends up in the sandstone below the distillery. And again, that's why the bottle looks like this. So when the designers came up and stayed with us for 3 days on Raasay, and we were telling them all the story, and we took them all around the island, when they went away, they called me up and they said, we're going to send you some modelling clay. Modelling clay? And they said, remember those rocks at the north end of the island that we really like? Take the modelling clay up there and push them into the rocks. So that's what we did. So all of this texturing on the bottle is actually from the rocks on Raasay. And then the sandstone, as I say, that the distillery is built on, a seam runs across to the east coast of the island, and there's fossils in the sandstone. So we collected some of these fossils, and this is one of the fossils that was pushed into the modelling clay in the rock. So you're literally holding a bit of Raasay in your hand. And again, it's to start to be able to talk about the island itself, the geology of the island, and how that geology influences the water and the minerality of the whiskey. So in terms of the minerality, one of the most important minerals we have is manganese. Manganese is really beneficial for the yeast development. So if you have 300 to 400 parts per million manganese in your water, and you have that obviously in your wort, it's really beneficial for fermentation for that yeast development. So that's all part of why the bottle looks like that. And then just going back to the, sorry, please go.
No, I just wanted to relax you a little bit, because if you are talking all the time, you will get a little bit tired, let's say. So I believe people here have already tried to testing the molds. So Alasdair, with your permission, if we could go, of course you will finish your description, and then we go for let's say from the checkup in one.
Okay.
Then let's go to understand the distillation part, and then we end up with the Hungarian part. That's an open session. So I only wanted to say that. Please continue. And one question, before you mentioned everything about water, etc., and everything is on Isle of Raasay. The barley comes from?
So the barley we have is commercial. Well, at the minute it's coming from Glen Esk, a company called Boort Malt is the parent company, or Paul's Malt as it's called in Scotland. So that's from Glen Esk malting. So that's in Angus, which is just south of Aberdeenshire. So that I should have said as well, the peat that we use is all Highland peat. So it's very much more of an aromatic wood smoke. So just very quickly, as I say, the 6 cask recipe, these middle casks are chinkapin casks. So what I'll do is I have a bottle of this chinkapin here. And so what I'll do is I'll pour this. I know you've got samples of that. So let's, as you quite rightly pointed out, get on to the important bit. Let's start with the
chinkapin one, which I believe it's really sweet.
Yeah, so you can see from the colour just how much influence comes from these chinkapin oak casks. So I always describe chinkapin as the glue that holds our 6 cask recipe together. So it's a really important part. But just to explain a little bit further about what chinkapin is. So chinkapin is the common name for Quercus muhlenbergi. So Quercus muhlenbergi is a North American white oak. We're all more familiar with Quercus alba. Quercus alba is what's typically used for bourbon barrels, and Quercus alba brings that classic vanilla butterscotch flavors. But I was concerned in developing our recipe that Quercus alba, if we used fresh oak, would overpower our spirit. So I wanted to find an oak species that would bring all of the flavour characteristics we're looking for, but without overpowering our spirit. And that's really where we settled on Quercus muhlenbergi. These casks are made to our specifications. So they're fresh oak casks. The timber cut in North America is seasoned for 36 months. So for 3 years seasoning, that's air drying. So that just allows the timber to dry out, but more importantly, the longer the air drying, the more the lignins break down into volatile phenols. So if you were just to take the dry matter of oak, 52% of that dry matter would be lignin. And lignin, as I say, when lignin breaks down, it becomes volatile phenols. So what we're looking for is we're looking to get some of those volatile phenols back during maturation from the wood. Same volatile phenols that you would get in peat in the peat from when you're malting the barley. So that's the first specification. The second specification is that we ask for a high toast. So obviously toasting the cask, toasting the oak, caramelizes the natural sugar, the hemicellulose in the wood. So you get these lovely caramelized toffee flavors coming through, but also that longer toasting period also starts to break the lignin down in the wood. So that longer toasting, that higher toasting level actually creates more of these volatile phenols in the oak that we will get back in time during maturation. And then thirdly, we ask for a high char. Now the high char, the greater charring, increases the surface area of the cask. So there's a more interaction with the spirit with the wood, because of the increased surface area. But probably most importantly, when producing a young whiskey, the charcoal itself removes the impurities from the spirit. So by having that high level of charring, that charcoal through maturation is actually starting to remove more of the impurities in the spirit. So again, this is a vatting. It's a vatting of peated and unpeated, of virgin oak fresh fill casks, but also refill casks as well. So those all those specifications that I just said with their peated and unpeated spirit, you get a real richness to that. And what we're looking for is these dark fruit flavors, but obviously you're getting those rich caramelized flavors as well. The refill casks for me bring a real citrus, almost like fresh lime note to it as well, which just starts to balance out some of the richness that you're getting from the Chinkapin oak cask. So,
guys, your impression to help Alasdair also, your tasting notes.
Definitely very sweet, a lot of maple.
Then when you're getting any of that sort of fresh citrus at the end.
Yep, and I think some perfumes on the nose. But the first impression I got, Alasdair, was it reminds me of Christos. Please help me also if you have this impression. It reminded me of the sweet smoke of Elsa Bay. It was really sweet and not intense smoke. Of course, with time it changes with the dark fruits and all of these things. But the first feeling I got when I was doing the samples and had some tasting, it was that it has a very sweet smoke. And it is totally different from Islay smoke, of course. And although it's mainland, as you mentioned, it's also different from Ardmore. It's really sweet and it's really woody, I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, a tree, not. I really like it.
Yeah, I think it very much is that sweet peat, and that's really what we were going for with the Highland peat. We wanted that. I would describe it as an aromatic, fragrant smoke. That's what we want.
Christo, can you mute?
No, I'm unmute, but I might have a lot of background because I have to be on a public place. Definitely a lot of sweetness, a lot of sort of fat, opulent flavor. Personally, being a smoke freak, I would have wanted the peat a little bit more apparent, a little bit more pronounced. But I can see that as a perfect introduction into smoke for someone to kind of get into the peat.
Yeah, I would agree, Christos. What we find is basically the peated barley comes in at 52 parts per million, but we take a very narrow cut. So the malted barley is heavily peated, but we take a very narrow cut. So what do I mean by that? We come on about 72%, and on peated, we stop the cut at 65. On unpeated, we stop at about 68, 67. So it's a very narrow cut. So we're not getting into those heavier phenols on purpose. But then I think, to your point as well, because of the influence from the wood, there's a very, very high amount of influence from the wood here. That's masking that peat slightly. So both of these bottlings, so if we were to analyze these, they'd both be about 6 parts per million. But the dram, when you taste it, will taste a lot more. You'll get a lot more of that peat smoke up front, and that's just because the activity of the cask is masking that peat in this particular bottling. So our peated spirit, if we were just bottling a peated spirit, would be about 11 parts per million. When we do the 50-50 unpeated and peated battings, we're about 6 parts per million in the bottle. But as I say, the barley's coming in at kind of 48, 52. So all of those things, you you're absolutely correct. All of those things together means that the peat's not at the forefront, and in addition, it's that sweet peat, that more kind of heather, aromatic kind of wood smoke. Yeah.
Just to come back on this for members to understand if they didn't get it, you are talking, Alasdair, about the peat on the bottle, not all the peat on the barley, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
So it may be 40-45% as you mentioned the peat on the barley, but then with the high cuts,
yeah,
you don't okay. And cutting at 65, 67, it's really high. So you cut from 73 to 65.
Yeah, 72 down to 65 for the peated. Yeah, so it's a very narrow cut, and it's because
exactly.
Yeah, that's the style we were looking for, and that, as I say, we keep talking about this lightly peated, and that's why.
So how much the cuts? 1 hour, 1.5 hours, not more. The hearts.
No, yeah, yes, it's very short. Yeah,
that explains a lot. Guys. Your notes for the incoming? Lefteris?
One comment before. I love the full transparency on your website about all the details, the technical details of the bottles. I love it.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Something that I wanted to ask, I cannot understand exactly. On the aftertaste, it's a bit spicy. I cannot now think of what type of spices I can recall.
Yeah, it's almost, for me, it's almost like a cinnamon spice, a sweeter spice.
Totally. Apples, baked apples and cinnamon.
Yeah.
Baked apples and cinnamon. That's totally what I get.
And again, that's down to the cast type, down to the Trinket oak, Quercus Muhlenbergi. And that's what it brings. It brings that kind of richness to it. When Dave Broom was up, we were probably sort of 2 years in. He was tasting the Chinkapin oak, and he described the Chinkapin oak as being in an American diner, having pancakes, maple syrup, and smoked bacon pieces. And that kind of, they're the sort of flavors that you get from this. Someone earlier said, I think yourself said maple syrup, and it's that kind of slightly smoky bacon maple syrup. That's got all of that going on.
Okay, great. Alasdair, if I may, one more technical question.
Yeah.
You said that family was blenders, and you had the recipe and you had the experience, all these things. So when you designed the distillery, the end in mind was the taste of the spirit, and then you order the stills based on the spirits that you wanted to produce, or you just order the stills based on capacity and you calibrate them to produce the flavors?
Yeah. So obviously, as I say, started with a blank sheet of paper, designed the style we want to make. So in basic terms, it's this lightly peated with dark fruits, but obviously, again, leaning towards the more aromatic Highland peat. And then I sat with the chemical engineers, this company called Allen Associates, and we started talking about the different things that could be offered on. So to give you an example, we've got cooling jackets on our washbacks. We have 6 stainless steel washbacks, 5,000 litre washbacks. And the cooling jackets can be either off or on. So what does that mean? Well, it means that we have some control over our fermentation temperatures. And we use the cooling jackets, and we stop the fermentation about 32 degrees C. So when we're on unpeated barley, we use the cooling jackets and we stop the temperatures going any higher than 32 degrees C. Now, why is that important? Well, the higher the temperature of fermentation, the more fusel oils are produced, the higher alcohol. So when we're on our peated spirit, on our peated malted barley, we don't use the cooling jackets, and it'll go to 35, maybe higher. And that, again, creates these fusel oils. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a bit more mouthfeel, a bit more viscosity, and a difference in character between the peated and the unpeated spirit. So, hopefully some of that viscosity, that oiliness comes through in the mouthfeel. And I think mouthfeel is something that we should all talk about more in whiskey. I think it's a really important thing, because if you can have that oiliness, the viscosity, it coats your mouth, it just brings all of the flavours to the fore. So that's the first thing that we can have offer on. On our wash still, we have a cooling jacket on the line arm. So our wash still is a lantern shape neck on the still. The idea with the lantern neck, as you know, is it just gives a little bit of expansion to the vapors. That expansion allows the vapors to cool slightly, and then you go back in still. So you're getting that little bit of reflux in the wash still in the low wines by having that lantern neck. But then as the vapors come up, we've got a slightly declined line arm. It's a couple of degrees declining, and then we have this cooling jacket. Now the cooling jacket and the shell and tube condenser are running all the time. So the cooling duties in two separate places. So the main cooling is the shell and tube, but you've also got this cooling on the line arm. Now, what that means is just between that, we've got a collection pot. So about halfway along the line arm, this collection pot, with a pipe that takes it back down into the wash still. And in that pipe, there's a hand valve that can be open or closed. So that's our other offer on. So the cooling's on all the time, but by opening that, the heavier vapors condense earlier and go back down into the still.
So you redistill them.
Yeah, so it's basically forms a loop. Now, that a lot of people at this point say that's a purifier. For me, it's not purifier. What we're doing is we're building up the heavier low wine vapors. And because on the wash still we don't take a cup, we still right down to water, those heavier vapors come over right at the very end. So again, with the hand valve open, we're building up oilier, more viscosity. And yes, there's more copper contact, which means it's cleaner, but it's not lighter. It's actually oily and more viscous. And when we're on unpeated, we have that hand valve closed. And then on our spirit still is a classic swan neck pot. It's quite short, but it's got a slightly inclined line arm, about 2 degree incline. So you get natural reflux, obviously, in the line arm as it goes across. But then when you get to the shell and tube condenser, there are 2 valves at that point. So we can close one and open the other one. So if we close the first one off, that stops the vapors going to the condenser and diverts them through what is a purifier. It's a little copper plate. It's like a little column. It's got 6 bubble cap copper plates in it. It's got a deflag, so you get cold spirit coming in the top. You've got the vapors coming in the bottom, and it bubbles through.
Like a continuous still, correct?
Like you can say, the best way I would describe it is that if you took the purifier and you put it where the swan neck is, you would have a Carter head still or a Loman still. So by closing a valve and opening a valve, we're changing from a swan neck to a Carter head. It's the best way of describing it. So that's really where the 3.4 times distilled came from. So that's about 0.2. So if we run all that through in one pass, we're about 2.2. But then what we did for the 3.4 is that we took the heart of the run and we put it back through the still with it on again. So that's where the 3.4 comes from. It's like a third.
So the secret is on the distillation process, correct? I would say that you play in the whole production process, the part that you play the most is the distillation process, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So you imagine with those 3 different things that can be offered on, the combinations of that, and then you add in peated and unpeated, we can produce 6, 7 different types of anything.
And the fermentation time, 60, 70 hours?
Yeah. So we do 3-day fermentations and 5-day fermentations. So just to talk you through that, obviously, as you know, 48 hours, you've got all the alcohol you're going to get. So why do we distill for 3 days? Well, it's 70 hours thereabout, the yeast cells start to die off, and you get a process called autolysis or lysis. So that basically the yeast cells, as they die off, they burst open. And as they burst open, all of the contents of the yeast cells end up in the wash. And that, again, creates these oily, more viscous, creates more mouthfeel in the wash, also creates more flavour as well as the yeast cells burst open. So that's our 3-day fermentations. So then if the yeast is died, why do we do another 2 days? Why do we ferment for another 2 days? Well, we get lactobacillus development. So lactobacillus occur naturally on the malted barley. There's hundreds of different types of lactobacillus. However, very few of them can survive that first water, the 64.5 degrees C of the first water. But a few of them do. And when the yeast dies off, those lactobacillus start to grow. And we had our wash analysed. So I can tell you we have 9 different types of lactobacillus in our wash. 3 of them in enough populations to actually influence the lactobacillus fermentation. So what do lactobacillus do? Well, as the name suggests, they produce lactic acid. The lactic acid lowers the pH of the wash. The lower the pH of the wash, the better the interaction with copper. So obviously copper is a catalytic reaction. It's removing impurities, particularly sulfur, reacting with the copper, takes them out. So again, it cleans the spirit up. So the lower the pH, the better that catalytic reaction. The other thing that lactic acid does is it reacts with the esters that the yeast already produce, and you get longer chain esters. And those longer chain esters are those dark fruit flavors that we're looking for. So at the minute, we're working 5 days a week, 1 shift 5 days a week. So we get 2 3-day fermentations and 3 5-day fermentations in that week. But we bottle, we cask fill every day. So off 1 shift, we get 3 casks. So that's why when you were talking about all the information you put on the website, when we do single cask bottlings, we can tell you whether it's a 3-day fermentation or a 5-day fermentation, and you can taste the difference between them.
That's really interesting for us, meaning we have John here to support us. We have you, Alasdair, so group can decide about the cask. And I also see that you have quarter casks.
Yes, we do.
Which is really, really interesting, and I believe the wood influence could be much higher than the other casks.
Yes.
Okay,
yes. So,
thank you. Can you disclose the yeast that you are using?
Yeah, so we use 3 different yeasts. We use 2 distillers yeasts. One of them is MW from Lallemand, which is a very typical
Distiller Max.
Yeah, Distiller Max. Yeah. The other one we used is I'm trying to remember the name now. I'll come back to it in a second.
Biotech.
It's not Biotech. No, it's WHC Hercules. It's called Hercules, and it is much better at higher temperatures. So by using combination of 2 distillers yeast, it means that we can, as I was saying with the cooling jackets, we can work at 2. It's more thermophilic essentially. So then the third yeast we use is Distiller Max LS, which is a champagne yeast. We use the champagne yeast because we want to drive those fruit flavors, but the champagne yeast also brings kind of drier, biscuity, almost effervescent elements to the whiskey. So we've also used that on its own. So later this year there will be 100% champagne release.
No, okay, interesting.
The downside of using champagne yeast though is obviously it's come from grapes and vineyards, and it's looking for fructose. It's looking for the sugar fructose. Obviously, we're giving up maltose because we're using malted barley, and I think there's something like 65% of our wort is malted, and it needs fructose and glucose too. So we get a much lower alcohol yield as a result when we use the champagne yeast, but we get these completely different flavors, which is why we do it. And then we've used it in combination with the distiller's yeast as well. So.
Have you decided the cask that you are going to use for the champagne yeast, second fill bourbon or something else?
So it's actually been fully matured in Four Roses bourbon cask. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the transparency, Alasdair. We really appreciate this one. Thank you so much for the transparency.
The pleasure. We have done one bottling of champagne yeast, and it was a single cask bottling. Unfortunately, that's sold out now, but it was very interesting.
We'll bring it to Greece. We'll try to bring it to Greece for 2027. Guys, any notes on the Chinkapin before we do the technical part for the 3.4 distillation, and then we go to Gary and Oak? Any other notes on the Chinkapin? Vangelis, whoever wants to, Mr. Clears, whoever. Okay. So, Alasdair, the reason of, as I said at the beginning, before we start the recording, was that we do a series of, let's say, seminars, webinars. If we can, we will continue throughout the summer, not in August, of course. So this is our second webinar, and it is a scoped webinar to discuss about distillation. So it really triggers my mind about the 3.4 distillation and the purifier. So I know that you're not using Macmillan and Forsyth, you are using Freely stills, which makes the whole equation makes it really, let's say, challenging. Italian stills in Scotland, not traditional ones, with this line to do the purifier and revert back the vapors plus the column still as the Lomond one that you said. Can you just discuss about this?
Yeah, so the first point there, I guess, is that we did go to Raasay and ask them to quote for the stills for Raasay. And unfortunately for us, they were in the process of making 36 stills for Macallan. When we went and asked them for a quote, that was the big job that they had on the time. And I guess there's one similarity in that our spirit still is 3,600 litres, and Macallan's spirit stills are in the new distillery are 3,600 litres, but they've got 24 of them and we've got one. So anyway, that's why for Raasay were unable to help us. They said it'd be 3 years before they had stills. So we spoke to other still manufacturers, and Philly were able to provide the stills for us in 7 months. So what I always say to people about the stills is that if Raasay were Rolls Royces, then Philly is Ferrari. So that's our stills on Raasay. So we're certainly very pleased with them. They were very helpful in helping me design the process and being able to build these other elements into our distillation process. And the other thing that I was able to design in off the spirit still, so there's two valves before the one valve that closes off the condenser, and that takes the vapors through a spirit, a vapor basket. So we make a gin on Raasay. We don't have a gin still. We only make gin once a year. So we clean down completely after running after running unpeated malted barley. We clean down, we make gin for a week or 2 weeks, then we clean down and we go back onto spirit. So it's just another versatility of the process.
Using the same stills.
Using the same spirit still, yeah.
Interesting.
It's all in the cleaning though, don't worry. So yes, it's being able to distill these in, and what I wanted to be able to do, again, as I've said a couple of times already, is create different types of new make spirit. So some of that came from my blending background, but some of it also came from looking at other countries and other distilleries around the world, and I was very impressed with Japanese whiskey and how they had, in my opinion, managed to take Scotch whiskey and make it even better, just by looking at the processes and working differently. So some of that inspiration for the design of the stills came from that kind of Japanese philosophy of being able to make lots of different styles and new make in the same distillery. So it was to allow us to to do that. And it gives us options.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing this information. And the idea for the 3.4, actually how this purifier or Lomo still is working for you, meaning you do the first, it is between the wash still and the spirit still or after the spirit still?
No, so it's after the spirit still. So it sits separately on its own beside the shell and cube condenser for the spirit still. And the initial idea was that in one pass is to be able to pass through, and it takes us from, an average spirit on just the spirit still itself would be about 70% ABV. But on one pass with the little purifier, we get up to about 80% ABV. And then we thought, well, what would happen if we were to take that spirit and put it back in for a second time? Because when we used it originally, it was just all on that one pass. So either it was on or it was not on. So that's where the 3.4 came from. And it was really about, so when we use it on one pass with the purifier, it really focuses in on that black currant note. It's also a much, much cleaner spirit. So you kind of lose the edges, and it focuses in on the spirit character, and you get this real black currant fruit flavor. When we put it through the second time through the spirit still, it just elevated it again, and that fruit character just changes from the intense black currant to this really ripe pear. That classic pear drop element that you get, and we're up about 85% ABV at that point. So it's very similar to, say, Rosebank or Auchentoshan, where they've got the three stills, and then they're cutting. They're taking their cut in the 80s. So it was just a concept that I had, and that's why I started talking about this virtual still, or the Carter head still, because when you're in the distillery, you can only see two pot stills, and so it's just a way of being able to describe how we could do this, and we could get into that much lighter, more of a ripe green fruit flavor, which is not characteristic of Raasay, is not the characters we're looking for in the dram. But it's just another way, by having something that can be off or on. So, like having a third still without having a third still.
And you selected the rye cask before because of the 3.4 distillation. It was just a coincidence you had rye cask, or the spirit produced was matching with the rye casks.
It was matching this lighter spirit and trying to create, because for me, the rye casks, we use rye over bourbon for the dram, is this black pepper spice, and the longer the spirit's in the cask, the more that becomes a white pepper, or almost a Szechuan pepper note. So it was really that, I think, sits better with those green fruit, the ripe pear notes. So that's why we use the rye cask.
Thank you. So, guys, I'm only doing the questions. So, if anyone would like to ask something before we move to the Hungarian oak. Alasdair, you will go to Raasay, so you will tell us again your impression. You will send photos.
Of course, I will try all the different casks.
Also, what I would say is, if there's any questions after this, please feel free to collate them, send me an email, and it's what it's like. Sometimes you wake up the next day and you think, oh, I wish I'd asked that. So please just email me with anything.
Alasdair, I believe the best idea for the members here is to download the Substack and follow you, because the articles that you put on Substack are amazing, meaning really informative, especially on barley and cask. They're really great. Thank you for uploading them. So, any other questions, or we go to the Hungarian oak? Alasdair, I
Okay.
have a question before we go to the Hungarian
Yeah.
oak. Do we have such casks there, meaning rye cask, Chinkapin, and Hungarian oak? Do we have casks available?
For bottling for yourselves? Yeah, I mean,
Exactly, yes.
the rye cask, absolutely. The rye cask, the Chinkapin oak, and the ex Bordeaux we always have, because that's the recipe that we're making all the time. So we always have unpeated and peated spirit in those three cask types. They're always available. The Chinkapin cask, as I say, now we're starting to refill those, and it gives us a completely different flavor profile on that next fill than it does from when it's a fresh virgin oak cask. So yeah, but there are casks available.
Thank you. John, you listen, correct? We do have casks there. So we need to find a guy
Don't
from
you worry,
Greece.
I'm here.
We need to find a guy from Greece traveling to Isle of Raasay, take the cask with him.
Yeah, it's not a problem. It's one of the best drives in the world, at this time of year especially. I've got to say, the Farcoolans are calling out to me, as we would sing. But yeah, no problem. Don't ask me in December, but I'm
No, I won't. As I said on my email communication, we are planning for 2027. So I believe if members are okay, there is an option to visit Isle of Raasay on this area, but that's an internal decision. But I really like what I taste here, Alasdair, and I believe members will tell about it. The Hungarian oak has a very different nose.
Yeah,
it is a distinctive nose. I like very much.
So I'm just gonna open mine.
Παιδιά, πάμε στο δεύτερο. Dino, I don't listen. You are so silent today. Where's Dino? Judge Skin.
I'm here listening.
You are listening, but you are not talking.
With great attention.
But you are not talking. How come? And this was, Alasdair, sorry, this is the first full maturation in Chinkapin, correct? Then tilling followed. It's not a finishing on Chinkapin, it's a full maturation on Chinkapin.
Full maturation. Yeah, full maturation. Yeah.
So it's the first ever. Tilling, I believe, followed. And another one for Scotland did the full maturation on.
I mean, there is I know Brewer Hadley did an Octomore that was fully matured in Chinkapin oak.
Yes, you didn't tell me.
Yeah, but it's still Octomore. No, I think it's fair to say that most other distilleries in Scotland, some other distilleries in Scotland have used Chinkapin as a finish.
As a finish, not full maturation, as a finish.
Not full maturation. So for us, it's all about the full maturation. And the reason that we do the full maturation is because it's such a component part of the dram, and it brings so much to the dram. So this is the Hungarian oak. So this is different in a couple of different ways. So this is the oak itself is Quercus petrea from the Zeppelin mountains in Hungary, and many years ago, this was the most prized oak for wine, for maturing wine in France. So all of the famous chateaus wanted Hungarian oak for wine, and because of the geopolitical situation, obviously the Austrian-Hungarian Empire and all of that collapsing meant that you couldn't get Hungarian oak, and that's where the French started to use their French Quercus petrea and their French Quercus robur, and French oak became the real kind of star of the wine industry in France. So it always kind of captured my kind of attention and was inspiring to think about this very little known fact now, something that's been forgotten about this Hungarian oak, and as well as about it being Quercus petrea, it's where it grows, it's the soils and the Zeppelin Mountains, and how it grows very slowly and has a very, very tight grain. And Quercus petrea, obviously the two most prolific European oaks are Quercus petrea and Quercus robur. Quercus robur tends to be more open and a wider grain, and Quercus petrea tends to be a tighter grain. But in Zeppelin Mountains, it's really prized for being very tight grain and growing more slowly. And that's why is that important? Well, in wine, sometimes you don't want too much oak influence. So a very, very fine grain means that the wine goes less far into the oak, and there's less influence from the oak itself. And for spirits, generally speaking, you would go for a more open grain, something like Quercus robur, which is a bit more open, and you're going to get more oak influence from that. So that itself was fascinating. But this particular bottling, that Quercus petrea oak was made into casks in Hungary, but then it went to Spain. And this particular bodega that we worked with used it to mature their Oloroso sherry. And so it's really, before we've even filled these casks on Raasay, it's Hungarian oak, Quercus petrea from the Zeppelin Mountains, that's then been used to mature Oloroso sherry from Jerez. And then the cask came to us. Now, these are 300-litre casks, quite an unusual cask size, the 300-litre casks. And then we filled them with our Raasay spirit. And so, it's really quite if you like, a complex cask before we even get to putting our Raasay whiskey in it. And I think when you say the nose is very different, I think you're getting that real, there's a dry, nutty Oloroso sherry to the nose, but there's also that classic regional, the Quercus petrea is very high regional, and that for some people that's cloves or cinnamon. It's this savoury spice, and I certainly get that savoury spice element with the sherry on the nose.
I would say that this is the secondary notes. I believe that what Apostolis mentioned in our close Viber group. Apostolis, you want to say, or shall I?
Yes. When I put the sample, I got pine needles and very woody notes. But now it goes more like a glue as it opens up, and more benzoic aromas.
But the pine needles and the resin from the pine tree are really obvious for us on the nose. It's the first thing that comes up, and then goes the Oloroso. And for me, it's surprising. I don't get any dryness from the Oloroso, meaning it's not that dry for me. But the basic notes is exactly what Apostol says, that the pine tree and the pine needles and the resin from the tree. That's and it's really surprising. It's totally different.
Yeah. I mean, it's. I definitely would agree with the resin.
Can I ask, is this both peated and unpeated spirit, and then you blend them, or?
Yeah, I think that's the case. Let me just check. Yes. Yeah. I'm just seeing if it's actually written, but yeah.
Okay, Lefteris provided the answer. The pit level is 13-15 ppm. He found it on your side, so thanks for the clarity. So it is peated, it is Hungarian oak, it is Oloroso in a bodega in Spain. It's a whole journey for the cask.
It is. It's something very special. And this particular parcel of cask we got, say we're working with one particular Bodigo, and they're all Oloroso, but as well as the Hungarian oak, we had some Dutch oak, Portuguese oak, German oak, Spanish oak, and even some Russian oak. And it's fascinating with the same sherry that's been in the cask to after whiskey's matured to see how the geography really changes. I mean, the classic example is the Russian oak, which is grown in such cold climate so slowly. It's still now not giving very much to the spirit at all. It's going to take a very long time to mature. So, these were all filled at the same time, which I think was around about 2021. Is that correct? Yeah, 2021. So it's interesting that not just oak species, but the geography and how and where the tree grows and what speed it grows at just completely changes what influence it has on our spirit.
No Mizunara oak and no Mongolian oak.
Haven't any Mongolian oak yet.
You should ask from Alasdair. He's in China now, so he can provide some Mongolian oak there.
I would be very interested, yeah.
Yes, that is.
Yeah, just wanted to add on this. First of all, for me, it's impressive. I really like it. I mean, probably I will buy a bottle. We can all disagree here, but to me, it has a very long aftertaste, which I really like. I find it a very long aftertaste. I don't know why. And I find it much more rounded than the previous one. Yeah. And also, I could not, a blind tasting, probably that I didn't know anything about the whiskey, I could not tell that it is 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I think it's fascinating, and I think the difference between this and the Trinket that I had before is that this is much more savoury to me. It doesn't have the sweet peat that we had so much of. It doesn't have the maple syrup. It's a completely different flavour profile altogether. But the spirit in the cask is, it's the same spirit. The in terms of the distillery character, very, very similar. But what you're tasting is the kind of, as we said already, that journey of that cask and what it's bringing to our spirit.
And I wouldn't even say that it's 50% alcohol, not even the previous one, 50.2, meaning they're really soft, they're really matured. Nothing to do with 4 or 5 years, as they said, but they're really soft and the alcohol is not dominant at all. And it's meaning this one is 50%. No, I cannot say that. It's really round. I really like it. And the first impression I got was that Cinca Pinot was better because the first flavors are sweet and peat and are easy to consume. But as the flavors matured in the glass and they evolved and they opened, the Hungarian oak has an amazing nose and really different one. Meaning it's not common to see this pine tree and all these elements.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the length of that finish is really coming from the amount of complexity that's in there. And each time you go back and take a sip, you're getting different flavors from it. I'm now getting more of that kind of cannony leather element coming through as well. So yeah, pretty complex.
Alasdair said that you have some articles about the barley types, etc. And so the question will go to what the other distilleries are mentioning, like terroir or provenance or David Broom that you mentioned, sense of a place, etc. Do you do the experiment, meaning keeping the distillation process exactly the same, keeping the casks exactly the same, and change the barley type to see whether they have a different influence? And the question per se is your distillation process, or is the distillation process killing the barley, or you do have the barley flavors going inside the cask?
Yeah, there's a lot there. Alkis, I don't know if you've got a question as well.
Yeah, Alki, would you like? Yes.
Yes. First of all, thank you for everything, Alasdair. Samples are wonderful. The second one, I found it candy, minty, and eucalyptus also. It's very earthy to me, to be honest. And the Oloroso bonds perfectly with the whole thing. It's very interesting and great at the same time. What's the percentage of the peated and unpeated for the certain bottle?
And pretty much most of the time we're 50% peated, 50% unpeated. So for our lightly peated, it's certainly in the dram.
It's quite balanced. It's quite balanced. Exactly. The peat does not disturb you, but at the same time, it's very distinctive. Okay, I appreciate it.
And to go back to the barley varieties, what I would say on the barley varieties is the commercial barley varieties, Concerto, Laureate, Raasay, Diablo, because they're all of the same parentage, the same lineage, they've all been bred, and they're really, from a plant breeder's point of view, they're bleeding that from yield. There's very little difference in those varieties through our distillation. It'd be very, very difficult just tasting the new make spirit, before it's matured with the different barley varieties. And we keep samples from each distillation, and when you go back, it's very difficult to actually go, well, this is Laureate, this is Concerto, this is Diablo. But where we see the differences is where we use varieties like we've used Bear Barley and some heritage varieties like Maris Otter. And when you taste those through distillation, they're very different. And we've worked with an estate in Shappensea, which is one of the Orkney Islands, and they have grown a variety called Sienna.
Yeah, Sienna, okay.
Sienna, and it's grown organically in Shappensea. And again, you can pick that out in a blind tasting of just new make. So I think the barley variety depends very much on whether it's commercial or whether it's a landrace or whether it's a heritage variety, or certainly with the Sienna, I think that's more to do with it being grown organically, and it's more to do with that. So I think that's one part of it. To answer your question, do we keep all the parameters the same? The barley varieties, the honest answer is no. On that one, we haven't specifically done that, but as we've said already, anything that we bottle, you can go to the website and it will tell you the barley variety, it will tell you the cut points, it will tell you when it was distilled. So it is possible. I haven't sat and done this, but it's possible to actually break things down and do comparative tasting to see the difference. The one thing that we did do and kept as many of the parameters exactly the same for the spirit was we did a pack. It was called our oak species maturation pack. So it's got 5 miniatures, 4 or 5 CL bottles, and it's got 4 different oak species. So when you taste that side by side, it's all a lightly peated spirit with the same cut points, the same barley varieties, and all you're doing is tasting the influence of the oak species during maturation. So that's the only one we haven't. With the barley varieties, got it down to that.
So for you, Alasdair, if we could make this question, because there is a debate and there's different distillers replying with different. For you, what makes the difference? Is the cask? Is the distillation process? Is the barley in the fermentation?
Yeah,
and so you know, we have the stupid quotation. Sorry to mention stupid, but we have this quotation that 70%, 90% comes from the cask. So why don't you just put alcohol inside the cask and you have whiskey? That's my opinion. But what makes really the difference?
So I think there's just when you get into the amount of variables, the amount of variables in making Scotch whisky, it's very, very hard to start pulling individual factors out. So if you think about all the things we've talked about tonight, the first thing is the mashing. So we had to decide, are we going to produce clear wort or cloudy wort? So that mashing process makes a huge difference right early on in the process. So barley variety, yes. So if you go back to the field, barley variety, absolutely. Where it's grown, probably, but not if it's commercial. If it's commercially plant-bred varieties, there's very little difference in them. If you move away from those and use heritage varieties or landrace varieties, there's very much a different flavour profile from the barley. Then you've got the mashing. So you've got to decide clear wort or cloudy wort. So clear wort takes you much more into what we're making on Raasay. which to me leans towards let's call it an elegant, lighter style. Whereas if we were going cloudy wort, you'd have a much nuttier, oilier resulting new mixed spirit. So that's, and then you've got, well, are we just going for alcohol? Are we just going to do 52-hour fermentations, or are we going to do 3-day fermentations, 5-day fermentations, 7-day fermentations? We've got some spirit made from 3-week fermentations for special releases in the future that had some spent brewer's yeast in it. So then you get into, well, the yeast makes a difference. So we've used champagne yeast, produces very different flavors. Even in the distiller's yeast, they produce different flavors. We've even used a particular yeast that produces pineapple tropical fruit flavors. We've specifically only used that yeast when we're using rum casks for maturation, because we're trying to drive those. And then you've got the shape of the still, how quickly you run the stills, how slowly you run the stills, what temperature you run the stills at. So if you manage to get up to over 140 to 220 degrees C, you're into the Maillard reaction. But the Maillard reaction, you need to have the proteins and sugars there as well. So you need, that's probably sitting more with your cloudier wash. That then creates different flavors. So before you even get to the cask, and then you've got the cut. What cut are you going to take? You know, you're going to take a wide cut, a narrow cut. Are you going to go towards the top or towards the bottom? So that's just your new mix, but all of those variables. Then you've got the cask, and yeah. So I'm a believer in all of that, and it's trying to. I think when I was designing the distillery, I was trying to pick the things that I wanted for the style of spirit, that new mix spirit that we wanted to make, and then to match that with cask types that would work with our spirit. So as a drinker, I love Hungarian Tokaj. I love the Tokaj wine. I wouldn't put our spirit in a Tokaj wine cask as much as I like it, because I don't think it's going to work with the spirit, so we wouldn't go there. So I think, yeah, there's no definitive answer. For me, the important thing is, what is it that you're trying to make, and then choose the variables that allows you to make what you want to make.
Thank you, Alasdair. Thank you so much. Guys, questions, opinions about the Hungarian oak? Before, Alasdair, how are you with time? Meaning, I believe we enjoy the webinar, but you have also other things to do, and I don't know, it's already 11 o'clock here in Greece. Do you have time? Do you have, let's say, 20 to 25 minutes more?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Questions? John, Alkis, Lefteris, whoever. Christoph. No questions, no tasting notes for the Hungarian. Okay, Dino.
Hello. I would like to ask about the fermentation process. I say you have 3 to 5 days. I guess it's not fully fermented by then. You just stop the fermentation, right?
No, so again, we've got about 48 hours, 2 days in, we've probably got all the alcohol we're going to get. But by that point, we've got 8% alcohol. So pretty much by that point, particularly with distiller's yeast, it pretty much turned as much of the natural sugars that are there into alcohol. Well, the reason that we carry on to, sorry.
The question is, do you stop the fermentation intentionally, or it stops by itself?
It stops by itself. Yeah, we don't do any cooling or bring it down to stop. I mean, I think that would be a fascinating thing to do. We don't do it. We let the yeast naturally finish the fermentation. We let the yeast cells die off. So we're not trying to condition it. And then we move into the lactobacillus development.
Okay, that's very good. So why do you leave it to stop the fermentation by itself. It gives what to the wash?
Yeah, so
the new make spirit.
Yeah, so two things that we want the yeast cells to die off. When the yeast dies, the cells burst open. Basically that gives us more oiliness, more butteriness, and some different kind of heavier flavors that we're looking for. So that's why we want the yeast to have fully gone through its cycle. And then we want, on the 5-day fermentations, we want the lactobacillus to start developing and producing lactic acid. So for us, that's why we do 3 and 5-day fermentations. However, going back to the variables, it would be fascinating to bring the temperature right down and to let the wash sit on the lees, as it were, to use a wine term, and to sit on the yeast. I was at one distillery in France where they had intentionally done that and cooled it right down and left it sitting on the yeast. And I was blown away by their new make spirit they made from that. It was really, really fascinating. And I think that's what I'm saying. There's so many different approaches that you can take. So for us, we do the 3 and 5-day fermentations. We allow the fermentation to finish naturally. We're not doing anything because that's what we're looking for. But certainly, yeah, there's part of me going, it would be great. It'd be great to try and to do that and to maybe control and pull on that bit of fermentation, but we don't.
Okay, I'm pro to let the fermentation stop by itself. I'm pro to that. And I have one more question about the barley.
Yeah.
Some people, some distilleries, and especially some craft distilleries, use beer barley instead of distiller's barley. Have you ever thought to experiment for that, or do you have an opinion why some use beer barley and you are not?
Yeah, so we do use beer barley. We have oh goodness, for 5-6 years now we've had a load of beer barley grown for us every year. It's actually grown in Berwickshire in the Scottish borders, so very close to where my great grandfather blended whiskey. And this year we'll have 28 tons. So we're doing an annual distillation of beer barley, and we're doing that because it produces very, very different flavors from other barley varieties. We've matured that so far. We've matured that in our ex-Bordeaux red wine casks. So French oak, Quercus Trail, Quercus Roba, ex-Bordeaux red wine with beer barley in it. We've done one release so far, single cask bottling it, and for me it really just sings. It just brings great character. What I would say, obviously, is that the beer barley doesn't produce the level of alcohol. So instead of the kind of 400, 410 litres of alcohol you would get per tonne of commercial barley, you're probably down in the low to mid 300 litres of alcohol. So it's a very different yield, but I think the flavour benefits are immense by using beer. So that's why we do it. I think it produces an exceptional spirit.
I agree with you. Thank you.
Guys, anyone else would like to make a question? Then we go to tasting notes. Alkis. Okay, Alasdair, please.
I guess we ask general questions, right?
I believe so, because I think that Alasdair mentioned everything about the distillation process, the barley, the yeast, whatever. So, thank you. Please, Alasdair.
Is there anything that you are really excited and looking for, like any type of experiment or anything related to the distillery that excites you right now, if you can lecture?
Yes, I mean, a number of things. Some of them I mentioned already. So I'm really looking forward to the release of the 100% champagne yeast. I think that'd be really interesting. We've got some full maturation in Tawny port wine casks, so not finished, full term maturation. That's been a journey in itself, because trying to get the balance with the peated spirit with the very rich dark fruits of the port wine. It's taken a lot of time for the spirit to get into the oak and for us to start getting the oak. So I believe now that we've reached the point where the balance is right. In the basically tasting that through its maturation, the balance was not right for quite a lot of years. So I'm very excited about that, because I think we've just got to the right point where it's ready for bottling. And yeah, what else? Yeah, there's quite a few other things that are there. We grew barley on Raasay. So in 2017, 2018, 2019, we did variety trials to find, because it's very wet, we've got a very short growing season. We can only grow May till August. So that was very exciting. I don't think there's only 9 casks of 100% Raasay barley, so it's going to be a long time before we release those. But these are the sorts of things that I'm quite excited about. I'm also very excited about that pineapple yeast and rum cask, but that's further. That's not soon. That's sometime in the future.
Nice. Thanks.
Dino?
I have one more question about the cask management. Since you mentioned that you fully mature in Bordeaux casks,
Yes.
which are in general very tannic wines, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Aren't you afraid that the tannins of the wine will be transferred to the spirit and make it tannic?
Yeah, it's a very, very good question, because we use export Bordeaux red wine casks, but we actually only use export Bordeaux wine casks from the left bank, which are even higher than tannins than the right bank. So predominantly Cabernet Sauvignon grape. They are used for 3 vintages before they come to us. So by the 3rd vintage, that's as far as the wine has gone into the oak. It won't go any further if you do a 4th or the 5th. So we bring them in after 3 vintages. They are not cleaned. They are emptied and sent to us. We only bring them in the cooler months when the ambient temperature is below 12 degrees C, because we don't want any oxidation. We don't want any of that wine turning to vinegar. But what we have found, in particular with our peated spirit, is it really drives this maritime, I hesitate to say salty, there's no salt in whiskey, but it brings this salinity to the spirit. And we're just releasing some, what we're calling 7 years evolved. It's the Raasay range, so it's a series of 6 cask, single cask bottlings at cask strength, fully matured in the ex-Bordeaux red wine cask. And I am really pleased and impressed with how our spirit is developing in that. And I think, to answer your question, in the earlier days, it was going to take a long time for our spirit to mature in the wine cask, and we've really seen that develop. And that's because, very much like what I was saying about the Tawny port cask, you have to allow the spirit to go past the wine and get into the oak, and then you have to balance the oak influence with that tannic wine element. But for us, with our spirit character, I believe that it works and enhances it, and we get much more salinity with or probably better to say maritime influence in these ex-Bordeaux red wine casks than we are in the other cask types. And that's being a distillery on an island off an island, that's very pleasing when you start to see those notes develop in your whiskey. So yes, it is a risk. You're absolutely right, but I'm very happy with our results.
So it works better with the peaty spirit.
For me, it works best with our peated spirit. Yeah.
Have you tried or thought to try a white dry wine like a white Burgundy, for example?
So we've used red Burgundy cask, and that was for a special release just in France. We have used some white wine casks, two different types. One from a vineyard called Banbury Ridge in Essex, in England. They're producing very fine Chardonnay wines, so we've used some of their casks. And we also work with a company called Jimenez Spinola in Jerez. So they make white wines, but they make white wines using Pedro Jimenez grapes. So they're using Pedro Jimenez grapes to make white wine in Jerez. And we have some of their, we get 10 of their casks a year. And I think, it's working really, really well with our spirit, but something very different.
All right, thanks, Alasdair.
So, Alasdair, one question on my side. You mentioned about Russian oak and all these types of oaks. Are you also part of the plan of the project with the Scottish oak?
So we haven't used any of the Scottish oak casks yet. I have been a while back. Was talking to Greg Glass about that, and I think it's something that we will do. I guess what I'm going to be careful of as master distiller is I get very excited by all these different elements and want to try them all out. And my job is to make the dram, and that's really our signature and our flagship whiskey, and that's what it's all about. So we will have more of these other interesting things, but very much for the special releases in the future.
But it's easy to lose focus and character. There are so many options, and if you go picking around, cherry picking everything, you're losing the character and the focus. Okay, thank you. I'm thrilled that you have better barley. I think that I'm not gonna say that I can find the differences, but I've tasted a lot of different barleys. I'm the Bruichladdich fan, so I believe that better barley and Appaloosa barley, they make a difference, distinct difference in the spirit. And the berries, and it's really difficult to cultivate and to mash and to create a whiskey. And it's really nice that you have berry barley up there. And I would like to taste one, of course. John, I would like to taste the berry barley. So, Alasdair, no other question on my side. I just want to say thank you. I talk about more to 20-25 minutes more of your time. I think that we reached this limit. And I don't know, guys, a closing remark from each and every one of you. I think that it will be good starting from our friend from LKC Premium Drinks, John.
Thanks. See, I wasn't sleeping. I was just on mute. That's all. I'll leave the technical stuff to these guys because they know the stuff. Well, thanks, Alasdair. I just love listening to the sound of home, and I hope to get up to Isle of Raasay someday. Yeah, hopefully in the summer. The winter will be another experience, a unique one. I wouldn't put people off, but it's very different, I would suggest. So yeah, it's for the Vikings amongst us. But thanks for taking the time.
So alphabetical order, the way I see it in my screen. Alkis?
Well, first of all, appreciated for everything you have shared with us, Alasdair. Here in Greece, we have proverbs that say you can find the truth from a little child or for a crazy man. Here's my son. Here's my son. I gave him the samples to smell it, both of them. And he said, this smells wonderful, but the seconds, It's super wonderful. It's cover everything. Appreciate it. Appreciate
Alki,
it.
which one?
The second one, the Hungarian. You know,
Hungarian,
it was a little bit pittier, so you know me.
Okay.
Appreciate it, Alasdair. Thank you very much for everything.
Apo? Apostolis?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm not sleeping either. Thank you very much, Alasdair, for being with us today. It was wonderful. Thank you for sharing the drums and for sending them to Greece. And thanks to John for making it happen. And that's all for me. You can carry on.
Christos?
Well, I would agree with Alki's son. The Hungarian cask, I think, was the winning drum for me. Although I would be very interesting to see the G-Cup in a few more years, because I think that might be a type of cask that needs a little bit more time to show its true quality.
Thank you, Christos. DM? DM is sleeping.
Thank you for the nice presentation. It's an honor of us. The Hungarian cask, I believe it's very nice and with a great nose. And I hope to see you in my island, Crete.
That would be very nice.
If you want to have vacations in Crete Island, you just mail and the invitors will handle everything. Dino?
Yes, I would like to thank you, Alasdair, especially for being so open and disclosing every information about every step of the process. For that, I thank you very much. And I have also to say that I was very pleasantly surprised by both of drums, because I'm not a pit freak. It's not my favorite pit. But this was very balanced and not so overwhelming. So I kind of enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dino. George Mopoulos?
Thank you for the presentation. I agree with Christos that the Hungarian is something different, but the first drama has something very good inside. Probably soon will be something special.
So it needs further maturation, Alasdair. Lefties?
Yeah, thanks a lot. Impressed by the second one. Also, for sure, like you made a big fan. Now I have tried some other bottlings, but these two were like great. Yeah, I agree. Like I don't remember who said it. Like the pit is somehow tamed, and I really like it. Maybe it's the casks. So yes, thanks a lot. We'll meet you there.
Michael?
Well, I would like to thank you very much for your time, for a lot of information. I'm not very, I don't know very much about all the processes you described. It sounded quite interesting. And I think I'm a fan of the first drum that I tried, and I believe that I'm more of the sweet side of the whiskey and not a pit, very much a pit fan. And I believe that there is something that maybe can be improved. I don't know, with maturation maybe, or something like that. Thank you very much again. It was very interesting.
Thank you.
Themis?
Hi guys, good evening. Alasdair, thank you very much for having you tonight and for all the details and the information you share with us. I'll go for the second one, the Scottish-Magyar connection. It was more complex. I don't know, I loved it.
Thank you, Themis. Vangelis?
And for me, thank you very much for this. Sorry.
Hello. Yes, you should.
You have the same name, so Vangelis
testify.
Vangelis Liapis. Okay, we lost it, Vangelis. Okay.
Okay.
Let's go.
I will talk. Thank you very much. You shared more than enough. Thank you for sharing your knowledge for the drums. I was too very pleasantly surprised. I was a little bit skeptical, but like lefties, you were the fan. For me today, I enjoyed both drums, but today with the today facts, I enjoyed the first more. The sweetness, I like the sweetness more.
Okay.
Thank you again. I hope.
Sorry.
It's the same of all of them. Thank you very much for the connections. And for me, it's the first is better for the day.
So from our members, closing, Andreas? Andreas, okay.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed both of them. Thanks a lot from the presentation.
So Alasdair, the floor is yours. A closing remark from you. I only want to say thank you and looking forward to meet you in person. Please close today's webinar.
Just to say again, thank you very much for the opportunity. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, and I really appreciate your honest feedback as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Raasay. Hope to see you again. Bye.
Bye now. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night, guys.
Night, John.
Good night.
Καληνύχτα και καλημέρα για αύριο.
Κάτσε ρε Γιάννη λίγο. Κάτσε να τα πούμε λίγο.
Κάτσε να περίμενε να κόψω τη